Esteemed elders, Irene, brothers and sisters, I'm reminded of a tradition during the anti-apartheid struggle where if you spoke after so many great speeches, you started by saying, most of the really good points I was going to make have been eloquently made by the other speakers, and then you went on to say, however, for emphasis, and then you spoke for 2 hours. Let me just stress a few things then. Firstly, I think it's important to know that the elders that have come together as the elders when they were still young have provided leadership to many of us that are in this room. So today when they make a call on us to stand shoulder to shoulder with them, to actually push this campaign as a visionary campaign to bring ordinary people into the fight for human rights, we can only but respond with enthusiasm. Mama Gracia Machel and Madiba might not even know this, but actually the roots of what you might know as the Make Poverty History campaign that mobilized and continues to mobilize tens of millions of people to put pressure on governments on social and economic rights actually was born in Maputo at a meeting that you and Madiba hosted in December 2003. Archbishop Tutu has been a patron of CIVICUS since its founding and has given an important voice. But more important than that, when many of us who are South Africans were young, he was a voice of compassion, a voice of inspiration, and a voice of courage. And it's wonderful to see that he still carries that at a time when he should be in retirement. And Mary Robinson, who some of us really are struggling to embrace the idea that she's an elder, because she seems to have more energy than many of us. And again, she has been a fantastic supporter both of CIVICUS in its work with all our members, ActionAid, Transparency International, and Amnesty, and other partners that are here, but also as a champion of the global call to action against poverty. I think it's very important that this global launch is taking place on African soil for several reasons. One is that whether you know it or not, there is now scientific evidence that says that you are all Africans. Humanity, seriously, you can go check it out. All of humanity started in Ethiopia, the only country on the African continent not to have been colonized. And apparently as people migrated into Europe and so on, they acquired lighter pigmentation, so apologies to all of you who've had that problem. However, it's important that Africa, in the way it is portrayed in global media, in global discourse, is always seen as the continent that actually needs to be helped. It's a scar on the conscience of humanity, etc., etc. And I want to just say that in pushing this campaign and supporting this campaign, we need to ensure that the dignity of people in those parts of the world that has been stripped by historical injustices needs to be actually reclaimed. The African continent, dear brothers and sisters, is one of the richest continents underneath the ground. And precisely for that reason, we are one of the poorest continents above the ground. On September 11, 2001, when 3,000 innocent human beings lost their lives in a crime against humanity in New York and Washington, the whole world correctly stopped in solidarity and in outrage. However, it's important that we recognize that every single day on this continent, 6,000 people die from HIV/AIDS alone. 7,000 people die from malaria alone. Another 2,000 to 3,000 die from tuberculosis. When you add up those figures on a daily basis, that is the equivalent of 5 9/11s in terms of the loss of human life happening every single day on this continent. So today, we need to recognize this campaign offers us the possibility to assert the rights of all those human beings that have been perishing. This is not just a sad situation, this is not a problem. This is a passive genocide that is underway, or a silent tsunami. And unless we can all recognize the gravity of that loss of life and use this campaign to bring those people foremost in our minds and the center of the debates, we will be losing an important opportunity. We also need to recognize that there are different generations of rights that we are talking about. Quite often we tend to put more emphasis on civil and political rights. We need to ensure that in this campaign that social and economic rights, which are the second generation of rights, and the third generation of rights, which is about cultural rights, environmental rights, and so on, are all given the equal place, recognizing that if one of those rights are missing, all of those rights are actually under threat. And here I want to add my words to Irene's and to those of the other civil society colleagues here, that in the way we do this, we must introduce two words into this campaign: justice and also courage. By courage, I mean we must be willing to speak out against those that should know better. Those that actually preach democracy on the one hand and legitimize torture, detention without trial, racial and religious profiling, invasion of privacy, and so on the other, will need to be challenged courageously. Simply because you hold an election does not mean you can tick off a box that says democracy and human rights. And this campaign needs to actually do that. And on the on the Darfur case, I just want to give you one example that talks about the double standards that we have to address. Some of us were at the G8 in Germany, middle of this year. There were 13,000 professional police and other security personnel protecting the 8 G8 leaders. At that same time, there were 7,500 troops in Darfur. What is wrong about our priorities? What is wrong about us not being able to see that human life is equal and should be valued in the same way all over this planet? So in committing ourselves, as all of us that are here from civil society, we want to say that we will do whatever we can to respond to the leadership, the guidance and the wisdom that you all have given us over the years, and we will do everything we can to mobilize the largest number of ordinary people to throw the weight behind this campaign. I would like to just conclude, though, with two small anecdotes. One is a personal story of one of my best friends called Kumi Naidoo. No relationship, but same surname. When we were both 22 years old and we were fleeing the country into exile, he asked me, "Kumi, what is the biggest contribution that any one of us can give to the cause of justice, democracy, and human rights?" And I said, "What an easy question. Give our life." And he said, "You mean going out, participating in demonstration, getting shot and killed, and becoming a martyr?" I said, "Yes." He said, "That's the wrong answer." He said, "It's not giving your life, but giving the rest of your life." I was 22 years old at that time. I didn't know what he was talking about. 2 years later, while I was in exile, PEG's governor, sitting there in front, called me in Oxford to break the news that my friend Kumi Naidoo and 3 young women from Durban were brutally murdered by the apartheid regime. There were so many bullets in their bodies, their parents could not recognize them at the mortuary. But what Lenny was saying was that the struggle for justice, the struggle for human rights, the struggle for real democracy, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And those of us that have had the privilege to be able to be involved in these struggles need to recognize the biggest contribution that we can make is to make lifetime commitments. And in that sense, and to persevere, in that sense, the very ideas of the elders is a concretization of that idea that those that have played these roles need to make lifetime commitments. And finally, in concluding, I just am not the best singer in the world, but the idea that an African launch can happen without any music, I'm going to take a chance and just conclude with a song that just has 2 words, which all of you need to participate on. And given that we're all Africans, so the 2 words are Pambili, Africa, which means forward Africa, okay? So now I know there's 1 or 2 people extremely anxious about how badly I'm going to mess this up. So okay, just follow me, it's easy. Pambile, 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 Pambile I Africa. Pambile, 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 Pambile I Africa. Okay, one more time. Pambile, 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 Pambile I Africa. Pambile, 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 Pambile Africa. Thank you very much.